I've been kind of mad at the podcasting industry lately. Our feeds are increasingly filling with podcasts that look more slick than even the highest end late night TV shows ever did that I can recall. And the result has been that the kinds of people, i.e., people like maybe you and definitely me, who could really benefit from the kind of podcast that really identified and defined the word podcast when it first came to be, i.e., lo-fi, back to basics, just the voices, ma'am. They become too intimidated by all of this, frankly, expensive looking, gorgeous slickness that is way out of reach for them. Okay, maybe it's not fair to blame the industry for this, but hiding behind these glorious sets and branded mugs and design within reach, I mean, capital letters, the high-end furniture company that really is the opposite of that. They're certainly not within reach for someone who's just starting to dip their toe into podcasting and trying it out and feeling like, I don't want to make that much of an investment in something that may not be for me after all. They don't want to have to take out a second mortgage just to give this thing a try. It makes me want to flip a table because I'm sure there are untold thousands of brilliant entrepreneurs and founders who just simply decide podcasting isn't for them before they even start. Or worse, they do start, but then they shoot their whole budget within a few episodes, burn themselves out, and poof, they are another pod fade statistic. And this is the thing. High effort doesn't mean high reward. In fact, depending on your goals, and it's something I need to hear myself, putting more time into something can actually return an inverse amount of reward. If your podcast exists to build trust, showcase your expertise, deepen relationships, and bring the right people into your business or your mission, there are times when the more simple, more human, more sustainable version actually works better. Think about it. It's no coincidence that the rise of voice note communication is between people who really open up to each other. I've seen all kinds of Instagram reels about how the voice notes that they share with their friend group are actually their podcasts. And there is science to back this audio-based intimacy effect, which I've talked about before. I won't get into now. But the fact is, our clients are busy. Their attention is fractured AF. They're listening while they're walking the dog, driving to work, folding laundry, pretending to pay attention during yet another Zoom meeting. I have yet to listen to a podcast during a Zoom meeting, but I know it's happened. And they're not sitting there taking notes and deciding whether or not to pay attention or follow based on the quality of your lighting. In their mind, there's one question when they decide to keep listening to your podcast or start listening in the first place. Can this person help me? Today's guest, Jess Milanes, and I found ourselves coming back to that idea again and again. Before I forget, hi, I'm Courtney Reimer. This is Talking the Talk, a podcast about podcasting where I unpack my decades of experience from places like Audible and Spotify and put it to the test for my own podcast that hopefully you, my clients and cohorts, can learn and benefit from. And me too, if I'm honest. So what if the best podcast isn't the one that's the most polished, but instead the one that you can sustain and you can afford, frankly? What if easy mode podcasting is actually the one that can deliver the greatest returns? In fact, I think it might be. So if you've been waiting until everything is perfect until you hit record, this one's for you. Here is my conversation with Jess Milanes. Hi, I have one of my podcast soul sisters as my guest today, Jess Milanes. We actually have never met in person, but from the moment we started talking, I knew we were like peas in a pod in terms of how we think about podcasts, especially for business owners, founders, entrepreneurs who maybe want to showcase their expertise in a different way than, say, an email or a blog or social media can. Thanks for being here, Jess.
Thanks for having me, Courtney.
So let's get into that. I think a lot of people look at these Stephen Bartlett, Diary of a CEO, these beautiful sets that people have, and podcasts are everywhere in people's feeds. And they're sort of like, I want to, but it feels very out of reach. So what do you tell someone when they come to you and they're like, I want to make a podcast, but I don't know. I don't know if I'm good enough or my budget is good enough. What do you say?
Oh, I have so many thoughts on this. And one of the things that I love to tell people when they try to compare themselves to the Stephen Bartletts, Mel Robbins, Joe Rogans, all those those big names is think about the talk shows of the 80s and the 90s. The Maury Povich, the Jerry Springer, the Ricky Lake, the Sally Jesse. Was it Sally Jesse Raphael? Yes.
She had glasses like me. Anyway.
Yes, those fabulous red glasses. So those podcasts are really moving into that talk show realm. They have the same budgets, they have the same monetization strategies, and they're really looking to go big and scan wide over their audience. And so that is, generally speaking, not who the people who are listening to this want to be or want to do or want to speak to.
They might think they do, but then they find us and realize why that's not what they want.
Yeah. Like you can't tailor your message. You can't convert people. You can't get people to build that parasocial relationship with you to say, yes, I want to move forward with you, or yes, anytime I think of copywriting or whatever it may be, I want to work with you, if you go down that model.
Yeah.
So really, when I say that, it takes so much pressure off of everybody. They can finally say, oh, I can show up in my closet and just record. And to that, I say yes, because you can do audio, you can do video. I think that you had a past guest who talked a little bit about the differences between YouTube and audio and video podcasts. And I would encourage people to actually really critically think, like, what is my minimum viable product to move the needle in this? And generally speaking, audio is enough.
Yeah. And people think it's dead. People think, oh, in order to compete in this massive sea of podcasts, and we could talk about how actually not massive that sea is when you talk about pod fade and all of that. But what I tell people to do, and a lot of people these days do, is voice notes, right? I don't know if you communicate with your friends in voice notes. When they're stuck at that starting line and they think, oh my God, my background isn't great, or my closet doesn't look like the set of Stephen Bartlett's podcast or whatever, I say, send me a voice note. Talk to me about your podcast in a voice note. What we forget, you mentioned parasocial relationships, is there is something to that and literal science to back up that being in the ear of someone. It's almost like you're having a voice note exchange. I feel, I don't yet have the science to back this up, that the visual of it all can almost water down the audio. So I feel like, yeah, don't sleep on audio if you're completely stymied by the idea of the visual.
Yes. And like, there's nothing to say that season 1 can be audio only, and then season 2 could be video. I had a client who wanted to do video from the get-go. Cool. Great. Awesome. Her first season, we did it all virtually, just like you and I are doing today. And then she looked at all of her friends and her peers who were doing the in-studio stuff. And she started to have massive imposter syndrome. So she decided that she wanted to do an in-studio. And that only increased the cost, it increased the logistics, and to be determined on what the actual ROI of that difference is going to be. But if you're in branding, if you want that really polished look, go for it. But keep in mind that those talk show type podcasts are going to run you thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars every single month in studio fees, in equipment, in production fees. It really balloons up. So ask yourself, what are you doing this for?
Yeah, I love the ROI. Who knew here I would be in my life so excited about this acronym, but it's true. Also, I think if you're going to hire an editor, it takes longer to edit visual, just period,
Yes.
even if you're not doing the studio. So yes, I encourage people to do a hybrid. Like right now, one of my clients is someone who travels a lot, including overseas. And her being able to keep with a sit down in front of a camera kind of production schedule, I said, you can weave in some audio episodes that you can record anywhere. It can be a short little, again, voice note I'm obsessed with. I think people don't realize how there are no real rules. It's not like you have to have an either or that you have to go right into do you watch Allegedly on Netflix? This is the one I bring up all the time.
I have no time for TV. I wish I did. Do you see these little small children paintings behind me? I have a very small child, and so I work and I parent. But tell me about Allegedly.
Oh, it's just one of those podcasts on Netflix that's video. But yes. I basically want to live on her set. But okay, so we've spoken before. You haven't had that art behind you. I called it the preschool art. No shade if your child is older than preschool. You know, everybody's art.
I think most of this was like preschooly, so it's fair. Totally fair.
Yeah, for those of you just on audio, my people, trust that if you've seen some Jackson Pollock kind of preschool art, that's what she's got going on. And what that tells me is if I am a founder who also has kids, Jess is my people because she's somehow making it work and she's fine showing up with her kids' Jackson Pollock art behind her. That's the real secret sauce of podcasting. The less glossy you are, the more relatable, and the whole people buy from people, especially their people. So that's a good little note. Let's talk about how podcasts outside of the production of it all and the finished product of it all can still be a very valuable asset in your business before you even have a download. Do you agree with this? I think you know where I'm going with this.
Yeah. One of the things that I'm seeing a lot in the marketplace is everybody talking about you need to have a book. A book is an authority building thing. And 99% of us are not going to be New York Times bestsellers or USA Today bestsellers. But there is a certain prestige behind having a book, having authored a book. And that's the same with podcasts. There is a certain level of prestige behind having a podcast. What I really realized, especially in today's day and age, is it is a commitment to a long-term goal and sticking to it. And that, I think, is one of the things that if you are a podcast host actually shows you carry through on your shit. Can I swear on this?
I like to put in a little sort of novelty bleep. Just
Okay,
to be
great.
Yeah. No, I like it. Girl, I'm a truck driver over here. So I think where you're going with this is, okay, yes, podcasts build authority. People love to say that they have a podcast. It shows that you also have confidence, even if you're faking it, right? To show up on a microphone, lead a conversation. It's basically public speaking in disguise, right?
Yes.
But also, it is a long game if you're going for the download and the big audience. But even if you're not, I find that people say they don't love the sound of their voice and they say they don't want to be in the spotlight, but really they do, especially when it comes to guesting on a podcast. I've said so many times to people who are in my cohorts or clients, and they're like, nobody will want to be on my podcast. I'm just this business owner.
God.
And the 6 magic words I know you know to any potential guest are want to be on my podcast. You will get a yes. I think 99% of the time people love being on podcasts. And what that is a relationship builder before you even release that episode. So have you seen this relationship building, not necessarily with the audience, we know it's strong, but between host and guest?
Yes. In fact, this is one of the plays that I am doing in my own podcast, soon to be aired, where I am using it as a lead generation tool for me. I am doing outreach on LinkedIn, which is my platform of choice where my people are, and building those relationships. And if it seems like they are somebody that might be a really good guest and also potential client, I invite them onto my podcast to have a conversation, build that relationship. Because I'm in the podcasting space, I then show them what I can do in the post-production work, and then they're wowed and they want to hire me. But that is a tool and a trick that is not so spoken about often in podcasting land. One of my mentors, Carrie Kirpin of the Whisper Group.
Gosh.
Oh, you know Carrie?
Hi, Carrie. Okay. Yep.
Hey, Carrie. So she's talked about this with me. I don't know how public she's been. So Carrie, sorry if I'm sharing all of your threats.
We'll check and see if she's wants this out there, but she's a pretty open book. So
she is. But she created a podcast when she was at Likeable Media. That was a lead generation tool. She built this community and this book of business off of interviewing other women in the industries that she was targeting. And she's also doing something very similar with the Whisper Group. She's interviewing these women who have had phenomenal exits, or maybe some not so great exits, and
lessons
learning
learned.
about them. Yeah, lessons learned. Then that invites them into her world, and it only elevates her authority while being seen as interviewing all these amazing people who have experienced the thing that she is teaching and coaching on.
Okay, I have so many paths to go on this, but I think to me, it's always felt like an unintended side effect of the podcast interview. It's like, oh, wow, I just had a very valuable conversation with this person who I may partner with, who I may work with. But can you talk a little bit about intentionally, maybe it's not as explicit as this, as targeting a potential client and inviting them. When you do it, are you saying, hey, or is it just like a first warm conversation?
Honestly, it's a first warm conversation to just kind of build their confidence. You and I both know when you start a podcast, there's a lot of fear around starting the podcast. We talked about that at the beginning of this episode.
Yeah, for everyone.
There's this beauty of ripping off the Band-Aid through the actual episode and then saying, oh, you were really so good. Have you thought about doing your own podcast? So it's just this natural next step in my business cycle. Now, I understand that that doesn't fit for everybody who is listening. They might not be producing podcasts, so it might not be the natural next step, but think about what you could invite them into your world to take them a little bit deeper. Hey, I am hosting a dinner. Hey, I write about whatever it may be. Figure out what that next step is and invite them to take the next step with you, or invite them to continue the conversation to build that relationship.
Well, I think also what new podcasters often don't realize is they actually hold the power, or to put it another way, they are doing a service to someone by having them on their show, because you end up creating content for them that showcases them. That's why everybody wants to be on a podcast. I think that's also why some people charge to have people on their podcast, because you're basically creating content for them for free.
Yeah.
I think just for folks who are needing a checklist of reasons to start a podcast, add to that list that it can be a great way to start a conversation with someone who you think could benefit from your services and be a great client for you. Also, step away from that nobody will want to talk to me, when in all likelihood, new podcasters sometimes allow their guests to kind of drive the bus. So your guest is going to get a lot of airtime for free.
Yep.
I just like that reframe. I think it's worth noting too that there is some magic. We've both seen it, and now you're being more intentional about it. The conversation that happens in the podcast is inherently a give and take, right? It's not a just, let me sell you something or let me take. I think people fear they're going to be pitched something. But when you get a chance to have a conversation where it's like the whole world is shut out and it's just about you two, I can't think of any other, even networking, there's always other people buzzing around. So talk to me about what you think is magic about podcast conversations specifically.
I have stories about this. I don't know if you know this about me, but the whole reason why I got into podcasting was because I had a podcast in 2019 called Real Talk Women's Health and Fertility. I interviewed women's health experts around the world and other women who are struggling with infertility. It was basically my attempt to community build and destigmatize the conversation around that. I shut that down in October of 2019. I still talk to at least half of the guests that I had on.
Wow.
And it is 2026. It's been shut down for almost 7 years. And we built such a relationship in those conversations, and they know what I'm up to, that if they ever decide to start a podcast, or if they hear of somebody who's starting a podcast, I'm the first person that they think of. And that came from a conversation on a podcast in 2019, totally unrelated to my industry today. That's how deep these ties are.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. I mean, you probably have the statistics about how many people actually contend with infertility, but it is still a niche, right? So we started talking about everyone from Maury Povich to Stephen Bartlett and their huge audiences, but there's something to be said for listening to where your topic of passion or expertise is and building something around that. So many times, I'm sure you have this conversation with clients too, when I ask people, who's your audience? They say, well, as many people as possible, everyone. Why would I want to shut anyone out? So you've both advised on this and experienced it yourself, the power of specificity.
Yes.
Tell us more about that for you.
Oh gosh, I can say that with that women's health podcast versus when I first started in this business, that podcast very highly niched. My business when I started in 2022, I was willing to help anyone and everyone with podcasting however I could. Just please pay me money. We've all been there, right? It was so much easier to attract that ideal listener because I was niche down, I was authentic, I was speaking about what I really frickin' know. I think if you can do those three things, your podcast is going to be a success.
I'm sure you've had clients say to you, I don't want to eliminate, in the same way you're like, everybody's got to make money. It's as you drew that connection, it's like, I don't want to alienate anyone. Have you had that conversation with a client that's like, but I want to appeal to everyone.
I mean, I'm sure I have. And I have found that in my marketing and in just being who I am, I tend to no longer work with those people. Showing up as I am with my preschool art and often in soft pants and messy hair, you guys are getting me on a very made up day. I attract people that know what they want and are willing to be very narrow. So I can't say that I have had those conversations recently, but if you are looking to go broad, be prepared to be on the struggle bus. Just be prepared. It's not going to work for you. I would also say, even if you are trying to go in more of a sponsorship route rather than a authority building platform where you are looking to convert off of the podcast or bring them into the world through your podcast, sponsorships work better when you can be niched down. You can sell more money. You can reach better deals with that. In fact, a client of mine or a friend of mine, she's secured over $100,000 in sponsorship revenue from 3 seasons of her podcast.
Advertisers want to be targeted too. And they also want to know the person delivering the ad. Like if I were to be talking about Casper mattress, whatever, I don't even know what the one of the moment is. I can sleep on any mattress. I'm tired. So and you couldn't get me super passionate about it. But if it was about the new cool Sennheiser headphones, or we were talking about your Shure microphone, girl, I could go off and people would want to buy it based on what I'd have to say about it. Because that's my niche.
Yes, exactly. It's your niche, your trusted voice. And how did you become a trusted voice? By being visible in your vertical. And you did that through podcasting and marketing.
Yep. Let's talk a bit about how people find you with a podcast. I just finished a podcast episode about discovery. And there is this sort of, especially in our world, this assumption and understanding that you do need to be on YouTube, right? Can you talk to me about maybe some of the misconceptions about YouTube and how YouTube differs from traditional podcasting and where and when and how to do YouTube?
Yeah, this is something that I'm going to actually be exploring alongside my podcast that's coming out and really trying to build like a full case study or my own very unscientific research around this. But basically, when you look at YouTube, you are looking for the high top of funnel discoverability. These are the topics that people are searching on. These are the SEO things. These are the things that are going to be picked up by the AI crawlers. As far as I know, are AI crawlers even pulling from podcasts?
What I heard this week is if you have your transcript on the podcast website, it's treated sort of like
a blog post type thing. Yeah, we should do some more research on that because I think that would be a really good topic for another time. But with YouTube, you are going to be cached in all the right places and spaces. So you have to think about SEO, what people are searching for, this big top of funnel area. But once you actually get into the audio podcasting and off of YouTube, you can look at more nuanced topics. You can have more conversations. You can have a closer to the chest conversation than when you're on YouTube, in my opinion. One of the things that I am exploring, like I said, in my very unscientific research this fall, and I'm probably going to run the test from like October through March-ish, is building in public. The podcast that I'm using as a lead acquisition or a lead generation tool, I am going to be documenting that on YouTube because that is an educational portion. People are really interested in, will a podcast give me ROI? Will a podcast bring me leads? That is what people are searching for, not just Milanes' life story. That's where I think the nuance is going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of jealous. I'm in Jay Klaus's community, The Lab. You've probably heard of it. And he talks a lot about that whole educational piece of YouTube, almost just like screen sharing while you're doing something, just letting people have a window into how you work and being like, here's what I did, here's my process. I think it doesn't necessarily have to be either or. What I mean by that is for people who are like, oh, great, if I'm going to do YouTube, I have to go all in and I have to have a whole separate kind of strategy for how I approach my YouTube strategy. I also think you can start to tiptoe into YouTube using some of the pieces of your podcast, like for YouTube Shorts, right? For example, a short short version of the ROI piece, or why to do video versus audio. That could be a little discreet. If someone say, do I need to do video on my podcast? We might come up in the search results and it'll give them a taste and they'll start to see you a little bit, right? It's probably not as powerful as a full-on series, but I actually saw Gary Vee. I don't know how you feel about Gary Vee, but I was like, oh shoot, I really got to lean into my shorts strategy, because he was like, everybody just needs to invest in YouTube shorts. That's the future of search. And I don't think it has to be all or nothing. So what I told myself is, Courtney, I know you're busy. You're a solopreneur. You can't be everywhere and do everything as much as you would like to. But when you're cutting a clip this week for Instagram, maybe, even though I know the strategy is different, see how you could re-headline it that matches more of a YouTube search. What do you think about that as a starter kit for getting into YouTube, at least testing the waters?
I think that that's a really good testing the waters. And I will say I've had a couple clients who we have repurposed their reels from what we created for Instagram and put them on YouTube Shorts. And that has helped discoverability a lot. And it has caused them to be discoverable on the shorts. And then they go to their YouTube page and they might watch some episodes that they're interested in. I think that it's a really good low left strategy. Again, just be intentional with where you're sending people.
Yeah, I think it's funny. We talk about discoverability, and I don't want to totally repeat what I said in my Annika Jackson episode, folks. If you're hearing this, she's a professor of podcasting, and we talked all about discoverability. But there was a little light bulb moment for me in that conversation. When you say discoverability, I was like, well, people don't jump necessarily from a YouTube short to your podcast feed. But if you're a founder or a business owner who's there to get the attention of your ideal client, it doesn't matter if they find your podcast and they only found your YouTube short. Do you agree with that? Or do you think that's controversial?
I do. I don't even know what the statistic is these days, but there's so many touch points that you need before somebody actually starts
I've heard
working
7.
with you.
I've been saying 7 and I'm sticking with it.
Okay. All right. We love 7. That's a lucky number. It's fantastic. That YouTube short could be one of the 7. Now, how are you going to fill in the other 7? At the end of the YouTube short, are you going to have a link for them to join your email list? How do you get them further into your world? It's always like that spiral loop. I hate to say the whirlpool, but that's kind of how I envision it. Like,
it's the funnel. That's how a funnel works.
Come closer,
Right.
little ship. It just brings them closer and closer to you. So I do think that having a YouTube short and just having that is fine. But you need to have some sort of call to action at the end. So if they like it, they're not like, oh, Courtney was awesome, but she's gone.
Never see you again.
Yeah.
It's funny because that's another thing. People are like, do I have to have a call to action? They think it's like gross or overly salesy. But the fact is, if someone, even if they've just sat through a minute and a half, people click away real fast if they're not interested. If they're interested enough to even give you a minute and a half of their time, they're like, okay, where can I get more? They want to be led in. And so you talk about the spiral, but it's actually not nefarious. You're providing a service with your content. You're giving them a sort of like, hey, let me tell you a bit about what I've learned as someone who's an expert in what you're looking to learn more about, right?
Yeah. And I think often about the example that came to mind when you were saying that, and I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget it, is think about when you go over to a relatively new friend's home. You walk in the door and you're like, shoes off, shoes on. What do I do? Where do I put my purse? Where do I put my jacket? But if that friend opens up the door and says, hey, feel free to keep your shoes on. Here's the closet. You can hang up your jacket and your purse. Here's a hanger. Isn't that much lighter and much more freeing? That's
People
what a call to action is.
fatigue. Yeah, they don't want to have to work hard to find you and to know what to do. Yeah.
Yes. It's actually being kind to those that want to work with you to give them a next step. It's not being salesy. It's being kind.
So people talk about what should the CTA be, and I feel like I'm going to take notes here because you do. You need to accelerate that from first touch point. I have been sort of reluctantly building my email list because I've been told under no uncertain terms should you not have an email list, but it's a slog. So would you send people to the email list? What's your favorite CTA at this point?
I would say send people to my email list. I kind of agree with that because even if they follow you on Instagram or LinkedIn or whatever social media you're on, those are still algorithm dependent. Thank you. So just because they follow you does not mean that you are going to stay top of mind in their feed. The email is the only thing. And it really sucks as somebody who is an audio driven person. I would much rather talk than write. I'm guessing that that's probably why you're like, God, I need to have an email list, because you'd rather talk than write too. But I still think the email list is the best place to go. I also think not to go too big, but because again, we're thinking about people who may be solopreneurs or very small business owners who are time poor, like me.
I love that term for me.
But they're
for sure.
Oh, it's the realest. But you kind of want to think of your podcast as part of an ecosystem, and the email can be another part of that ecosystem. And so tying it all back to that, like social media, yes, it's helpful, but podcast, email, podcast, email, podcast, email, that's where you're really going to see the most lift in your business. So why I'm saying that is because I think that there is this burgeoning idea in the podcasting land for operators, solopreneurs, small business owners to kind of build out this media business, this community of sorts with their podcasts. And so your emails don't actually have to sell. They could be just a conversation. Hey, this is what I'm up to. This is what I was working on this week. Then at the bottom, it could have a little something about interested in working with me on my blueprint. Click here to learn more information. When I started thinking about newsletters like that, it opened up a whole new world for me, because I was like, I don't have to come up with sales copy every single week. I can just talk about the fact that I was at the lake last week and a funny story, and maybe tie that a little bit into, business world. But it gives you an opportunity to not be so locked in. And I really went on a rabbit hole there. I'm sorry.
I love that. And maybe this is only helpful it happens to be newsletter day for me. So I'm very cognizant of the fact that I consider my podcast a service. I'm always thinking about how can I be of service? And I get a little like, do they want to hear about me at the lake? But then listen, I tell my clients that all the time. It's part of building a relationship. People buy from people. The more you can let them into who you are. And I talk about her a lot, but Build with Becky, she is a community building entrepreneur. She has a business around it. She, to me, is one of the best examples of a voice note podcast. Anyway, the one that sticks the most to me has nothing to do with her business. She was like, hey, you guys, a few people have said they know I've gone through this health journey. She started after being sedentary for a really long time. As we entrepreneurs, because we're time poor, if we have time, we're going to put it into our business.
To work.
In front of our desk. And I guess what? I hired her to work with me on my community. Probably that episode about how she started walking more and taking breaks away from, like, it's kind of obvious, but knowing that she's a human too and needed to do those things, and that being a whole human as a business owner and someone people want to hire is better than just being an advice robot.
Yeah. I mean, I'm on Instagram. I doom scroll, but I like to think of it more as joy scrolling now, because I've curated my algorithm to more joy. But if you're looking at a lot of the business content on there, it's more based. Things I've tried that have led me to success story, things that I do. It's no longer those like hot tips as the top 5 tips to sell yourself or whatever it is. It's the 5 things I did to grow my business. And that humanization is so important, because in this world of AI that we're living in, people want to work with people, and people want to work with people that they know, like, and trust. And the only way that people are going to know, like, and trust you is if you show all sides of you.
This is a good lesson for me. Thank you for that. I'm barefoot right now. And I mentioned in one of my recent episodes, I was like, I feel like, is it gross if I show you that I'm so real? I didn't even put on socks today. Oh, you're going to put your
pants.
Guys, this is now a foot podcast. No, I'm kidding.
Please send your sponsorships.
Yes, exactly.
All right. For feet pictures.
I know. Even my kids know about the feet thing. Okay. Who knows if this will stay in? We'll talk, Hannah, my editor. Okay, we're getting to the end of our time. I appreciate you. I'm time poor, and I was late spending some of your time not being on this. So I want to go into a couple rapid fire. What would you say is the biggest podcast myth?
That you're going to be good from day one.
Ooh. What is the one thing founders who are getting into podcasting overthink?
Their podcasting setup.
For sure. What's something they underthink?
Their content.
What is the biggest surprise to you after having produced and created so many episodes in your career?
Oh, God, that's a hard one. I think the relationship building of podcasting. Another story that I didn't mention, but ties back to my previous podcast. Again, it was 2019, shut it down, didn't do anything for years. And then in 2023, somebody saw me on a Zoom, a community Zoom, and she private pinged me. She's like, hey, did you used to have a podcast? She was a podcast listener. And then she became a client.
All right. We love to hear that.
That is the power of podcasting right there.
Yes. Okay. Fill in the blank part now.
Okay.
Before you start a podcast, blank.
Have a plan.
If your podcast has 0 downloads, blank.
Ooh, that's a rough one. If your podcast has 0 downloads, take a look at your podcast name and how you're actually marketing it.
True or false, every founder needs a podcast.
I'm going to actually say false.
Okay, but true if you want to.
True if you want to. And the reason why I say false is because not everybody can speak in front of a microphone comfortably. There are some people who just are not comfortable speaking. And if you are more of a speaker than a writer, then you should be in podcasting. If you prefer doing lots and lots of writing, then blogging is probably the better path for you.
Yeah, I think that's good. That shows we're not just like trying to force everyone into a podcast if it's not for them. Okay. True or false, your first episode matters more than your 50th.
False.
Agree. It might be first in the feed, but the way they're usually sorted,
it doesn't matter anymore. And I mean, you're going to learn so much in between episode 1 and episode 50 that you're going to iterate and iterate and iterate. And if you get to episode 50, which you should because you are good at podcasting, even if you don't feel like it, you are standing on such a body of work that shows your growth. And isn't that amazing to have?
It is. Obviously, I agree. All right. I always close with something along these lines. If someone listening or watching, because guess what? We are a video podcast too. I know you got your hair done. This wasn't for nothing. If they're thinking about starting a podcast and they don't want to become a pod fade statistic, fading out, not making it anywhere near 50, what is one piece of advice you'd give them?
Plan out 6 months worth of content before you start. It doesn't mean that you have to have a full script. It doesn't mean that you have to have in-depth anything, but what you do need is to have an idea of what you're going to talk about, who you're speaking to, and come up with a list of content.
I love it. We love a plan. It's like it feels hard at the time, but then when life is hard, you're like, oh, I have this thing I can turn to. I've already figured it out. We love a plan.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Jess. You're brilliant, obviously, because we're peas in a pod. And I don't know, I'm brilliant too. No, I just, of course, love everything you have to say about this. You're so smart. Where can people find more of your smarts? Where should we send them?
Yeah. So you can find me on LinkedIn. My name is Jess, Jess, Milanes, Milanes. I'm also on Instagram at that same handle, Jess Milanes. And then if you want to check out my website, which you should, which will feature my podcast once it goes live, it is KNWN.com. It's known without the O.
Dropping a vowel is like the hip thing to do. So you're not only brilliant, you're hip. We love it.
Thank you. Thank you,
Jess. I appreciate you. Okay, as you could probably tell, Jess and I are soul sisters, kindred spirits, and here we are having the time of our lives on a podcast. One of my favorite moments from our conversation is when it reminded me of something I find myself saying to clients and cohorts and frankly myself all the time. Your audience almost never rewards the amount of effort you put into creating something. They reward how helpful it is. Sometimes the episode you spent 12 hours producing and editing lands with a thud. And sometimes the one you dashed off as a voice note and it just occurred to you because you realized you had something useful to say while sitting in your parked car, maybe waiting for your kid to emerge from daycare, what have you. That's the one that becomes the one you hear back about. This happened to me this week. The episode that I recorded off the seat of my pants when I was in Boise for Craft and Commerce and I used the Kit Studios. That was the one someone mentioned to me. And I had no script, no value proposition in mind. I just sat there and did it. So don't confuse production value with actual value. If you're creating a podcast to grow your business and not to win an Emmy, which this year was the first year they had Emmys, and guess who won? Amy Poehler. I digress. Your goal is not to compete with the Amy Poehlers of the world. It is not to make the one that everyone remarks, hey, where'd you get that throw pillow? It's the one that earns its keep, the one that you can sustain as long as it continues to return on the investment you make into it. And let's think about that ratio there. If you're investing a ton into it, even if it's just a ton of time, it's going to have to deliver 17 times the clients that it would if you just dashed it off. Again, this is me talking to myself as much to you. Every day I'm trying. But the one that you can consistently sustain and the one that builds trust with your audience by showing up for them in their ear every week or every 10-ish days, that's the one that's going to work harder for your business than you do. So if this episode gave you permission to start taking your podcast idea and dream a little less seriously, at least in terms of what it would require of you and your budget in order to start it, I have something for you. And probably by the time you're listening to this, I've spilled the beans on this new big thing that I've been working on for quite some time. It's called the Strategic Podcast Launch Studio. It is a 6-week done with you experience in a small group format that combines everything I've learned from leading multiple podcast launch accelerators and, of course, producing podcasts like Meghan Markle's Archetypes and Addicted, which was Audible's flagship branded podcast. I've layered on a much more hands-on approach to getting your show across the finish line. It's built so that you walk away with an actual real-life podcast with the title and cover art and trailer and feed that you can share with the world. It's also not just about launching that podcast, it's about building systems that support you rather than the other way around. So if you've been thinking about starting a podcast, don't want another course full of videos that you have to follow at your own pace, but someone to actually walk you through your specific challenges and ideas, then the Strategic Podcast Launch Studio might be for you. If you're interested, drop me an email. I've just opened up applications for very aligned people to join. My email is Courtney@soundsgreatstrategy.com. You can also sign up for my newsletter. My newsletter Sounds Great on Paper, where you'll get all the information and links to the application as well. And there's a link to that on my website, soundsgreatstrategy.com. Thanks as always for showing up for me and for yourself and doing your best, but not letting perfect be the enemy of good. I'll see you next time.